Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Sam Wong, and we're here with Rich Wah. Well, topic today in a hopefully a lively discussion is going to be emotional intelligence for founders. Rich, dive right in. Can I get you to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sure. My name is Rich Hua. I live in the Silicon Valley, and I have had the privilege of working with emotional intelligence really for decades. I've coached many C-level executives and founders, and I built basically one of the largest emotional intelligence communities in the world at Amazon. So over the past several years, I served as Amazon's chief EQ evangelist. Yes, there actually was one and the worldwide head of the Epic Leadership Program. And it existed because I created my own job, basically. And we trained 500,000 people inside Amazon and then reached another million people outside of Amazon with EQ skills. And so now I founded my own company and I serve as the chief EQ officer for the Epic Leadership Group. And Epic actually is spelled EPIQ. And the idea is that to thrive and succeed in this rapidly changing world, of course, AI is involved in that. You need EQ plus IQ to be able to really, do what you need to do.
Awesome. So just curious, you mentioned very significant role over at Amazon. What prompted the Amazon executives, the leadership to say, let's go ahead and do this. Let's charter Rich Wah to build this out for us?
Yeah, it's interesting. This kind of goes a little bit to my origin story, which I'll give you the brief version is I'm an engineer by, sort of by nature. And in my younger days, I really decided I want to focus on IQ because that is the only thing that matters. And my goal is to be a
Understand.
genius robot. And it actually worked out pretty well for a while. I got straight A's in high school. I actually got a perfect score on the SAT, got a 1600. I got into every college I applied to. I went to Berkeley with Sam, and I studied electrical engineering, computer science. But then I did something that kind of totally screwed up my genius robot plan. I got married. And my wife really didn't care about the genius part, really didn't like the robot part for some reason. She wanted this weird stuff like empathy, understanding, emotional connection. I'm like, wait a minute, what is this? So anyway, the point being, I realized that I needed to work on this. And I actually, instead of going directly into engineering, I became a missionary and an evangelist for actually a couple of decades. And
Hmm.
then about 13 years ago, I pivoted back into the corporate world. And after coaching lots of people in EQ, from brand new employees to C-level executives and many founders, I saw the exact same challenge around me. A lot of really high IQ people with
Right.
varying degrees of EQ. And the thing holding them back was not IQ. I mean, they were pretty darn smart. They were smart enough. What was going to
Mhm.
get them promoted or have more influence or be more successful was all on this emotional social side. And so at Amazon, I saw the exact same thing, some of the smartest people in the world, but I saw varying degrees of performance,
Right.
influence, leadership capability, and I said, I have the solution, and it's on this other side. And so I started talking about it, helping people and bringing lots and lots of research and data to convince a lot of really skeptical people about the value of this.
Okay, with that origin story, I have to ask. So, who is your favorite character on Star Trek?
You might think it's Spock, but actually it was Jim. I actually
Really?
really like Jim because I wanted to be this sort of inspiring guy who made stuff happen and led, so, I mean, I was a lot more like Spock, kind of like a combination of Spock and Scotty, I think was probably what I was. But I actually really aspired to be more like the captain. So Captain Kirk,
Wow.
that's right.
I wouldn't have guessed. I honestly I think I worshipped the captain Jim Kirk, but I absolutely loved Spock. Okay, I wanted to be James T. Kirk, but I didn't have that background, so I
Yeah.
thought, yeah, Spock I totally get. All
Yeah.
right. So that's a very interesting background. How did that work into, I mean, Amazon's great. They are a for-profit company, but how do you convince the executives to do something like this? How does that affect the company? What's the benefit to them? It wasn't purely just for the greater good.
No, not at all, actually. So here's the bottom line. when you're working at a for-profit or even a nonprofit, really any organization, the bottom line is business results,
Hmm.
right? And so the question that I would ask a lot of executives are, hey, what business problems are you facing that could be solved with greater connection, understanding, social skills?
Hmm.
They're like, oh my gosh, let me tell you, attracting talent, retention, alignment, silos, breaking down silos, adaptability, change. I mean, you name it. Like they came out with a flood of things. And so I was able to tie what I did to the business outcomes and solving
Got it.
challenges because, hey, no surprise, surprise, technology is not the fundamental issue. Processes and mechanisms are not the fundamental issue. It's people.
Right.
And in our very IQ-centric world, you have all these very, very bright leaders who've been trained in lots and lots of technical IQ type stuff and have almost no training in the social, emotional stuff. And
Hmm.
so that's the part that really gets them. So bringing the data and having empathy and solving the specific business challenges that they actually have allowed me to go from me doing my own thing to literally impacting, 500,000 people.
Got it. So there was an absolute tie from between the emotional intelligence and the interpersonal skills to their ability to actually contribute to the company. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, and each organization had their own KPIs and goals and this and that. And so for over here it might be retention, over here it might be innovation, over here it might be leadership effectiveness defined in some other way, over here it might be something else. And so understanding what their goals were, then tying it in. And what I found is two things. Number one, 100% of organizations could benefit from more emotional social
Right.
intelligence.
Right.
And number two, really smart people actually are willing to change their mind if you bring them data. And so I
Mm.
brought tons of data, tons of research. It wasn't just Rich Wa's, ideas about leadership. It was like, here's the research. At least take a look.
Hmm.
And there are a lot of skeptical people that were like, you know what? I thought emotional intelligence was a bunch of fluffy crap, but wow, I
Yeah.
didn't realize it actually could really benefit my business. Let me try. So that's what happened.
The funny thing is, I had a very similar experience when I got married, and my wife is complete non-engineer, non-nerd. She's a people person.
Thank
Um,
goodness.
Rich has a permission to say that because we've known each other for 30 plus years and they've seen my wife and I through the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay. I will personally attest to the fact that Rich and his wife have helped us in our lives, our marriage, our family, our parenting. They've helped us immensely. And we have a great relationship. I'm very, very thankful that Rich is one of my best friends. So,
Thank you,
um,
Sam.
I did want to just comment on one thing you mentioned about the people problems and stuff. Back when I was the first time CEO, I actually ran into a lot of challenges where Rich helped me through a lot of them. There were two main problems I consistently had trying to run the company. We were a small startup. We were constantly struggling to be able to get customers, make payroll, etc., and grow the company. The two problems were consistently, number one, employees, and number two, customers. And I needed them both. Okay.
And
I
number three,
needed them both.
leadership.
You would expose the obvious, wouldn't you?
Hey, that's everyone's problem. I mean, you're not alone, right?
So my perspective was it's everybody else, and Rich kind of points it out. It's like, but it comes down to you. You're the common denominator here. Okay.
Yeah. It's it's a really interesting thing, right? So for founders, most founders are so focused on the operations, right? Like, because your hair's on fire, right? I mean, you're
Right,
literally
right,
like trying to put it out, and so you've got all this stuff. I mean, it's investors, it's customers, it's your platform, it's ops, it's technology. I mean, it's overwhelming.
right.
And what they don't realize though is that like the thing that I tell leaders and founders and C-level executives is if you lack, like, here's the reason you should actually work on your EQ.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
you lack EQ, you are dumber than you should be.
Hmm.
And if your team lacks EQ, it is dumber than it should be. And there's a ton of research behind it, right? The fact is, we're all under an incredible amount of stress. And so Yerkes Dotson did some fascinating research years ago, and they found that there's a curvilinear relationship between stress and performance and clear thinking and creativity, all the things you want to do cognitively, right? And so if it's too low, you're bored and tired, but if it's too high, you're literally whacked out and you don't think straight.
Hmm.
And so you want to be in that optimal middle zone, right? The top of the curve, if you will. And that's where you have what Daniel Goleman calls maximum cognitive efficiency. It's where your IQ can be leveraged, right?
Hmm.
And like, have you ever, just listeners out there, have you ever done or said something really dumb, right? Like you said
Many
it, and you're
times.
like, oh my gosh, I wish I could pull that back into my mouth. Or you did it, and you're like, what was I thinking? What on earth was going on in my brain? That's a moment of minimum cognitive efficiency.
Hmm.
Were you actually dumb? Not really. You just acted dumb because you were probably under a high level of stress that was not managed properly,
Hmm.
right? And so if you want to think clearly, if you want to have influence, if you want to be maximally creative, if you want to work well with other people, if you want to like have lateral thinking and all that, like the point is you need to maximize that efficiency, and that's an emotional social skill, knowing how to manage your stress levels and your emotion levels. Um, and the other thing that's really
Hmm.
interesting is on teams, MIT did this fascinating research a few years ago. They found that the key factors to a really smart team had nothing to do with the IQ of the people. It
Hmm.
wasn't the maximum IQ, it wasn't the average IQ. Now, the caveat is they had to be smart enough. I mean, you can get like a bunch of,
Right, right.
dummies on a team and think you can get anything done. But once they're smart enough, it had nothing to do with like the IQ factor. It was social skills. It was sensitivity to each other. It was, willing to let everyone talk, diversity of thought. And funny enough, it was the percentage of women on the group as well. And it's
Wow.
because they found that women tended to have higher social sensitivity. So the point is they were able to communicate with each other. Like, have you ever seen a bunch of really smart people with a bunch of egos get nothing done because they're just
Yes, yes,
arguing with
yes.
each other all the time because they all think they're the smartest? Like, that's called minimum collective intelligence. So once you're smart enough, maximizing the collective intelligence is actually emotional social skills.
That's awesome. I have been in many, many places where there were a lot of really talented people.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the startups I was at earlier in my career, we had three Harvard MBAs amongst a team of, I think, 12 or 13 people. So fantastically capable, smart, talented people. And we failed. There was a startup. We failed because as I looked back at that situation, we were not able to maximize how we worked together.
Yeah.
We had incredibly bright people. Stanford professor was one of the employees as well. And we couldn't get on the same page. What
Yeah.
ended up happening was that camps started developing where there was Camp A and Camp B, and I'm sitting here in the middle. There was Camp C, I guess, that was sitting between them. And Camp A and Camp B were kind of not getting along.
Yeah.
And it was tough because that was a great company with a great product. I joined that company because I thought the software product that we had was game changing. Okay.
Yeah.
But the company really failed because they couldn't get on the same page. There was not enough
Yeah.
listening. There was too many shutting people down, feeling insulted about things, and people would feel stuff and they would react from their feelings instead of reacting what maybe from my Spock admiration days more logically. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I sort of put a spin on that. My spin is that it is fine to have feelings,
Mhm.
but you must respond with emotional intelligence, not just emotions.
Hmm.
Right. And so what a lot of people do is they try to shut off all the emotions, right? Let me just be logical. I will be a robot. But the problem is you're not a robot. And so that doesn't actually work.
Mhm.
When you try to be, quote, logical and you're having big feelings, what's going to happen is it's going to come out later as passive aggressiveness, right?
Right,
You
right.
may
That's
sound
exactly
a
what
certain
happened.
way, but
Right,
then what do you do with the feelings, right?
right.
So suppression is not a great long-term strategy. It's okay in the moment, but you still have to know what to do with it in a healthy way so that you can have a good relationship, right? And this is why Paul Graham in his, seminal essay, right? Like what we look for in founders, he said talk about five things that were key. The fifth one was friendship, right? If you don't know how to build friendships, if you don't know how to establish positive relationships with your founders, with your employees, especially when you're starting out, I
Right,
mean, every employee is really important, right? You only got like
right,
five or
right,
10 of
right.
them or 20. And so if you don't know how to do that, then it's incredibly problematic. It's just a matter of time before something, nasty happens without those social skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been some statistics I've heard in the startup space that somewhere around one third or more of founding teams fracture.
Yep.
And many times, founding teams, at least two of the founders probably knew each other beforehand.
Yep.
I remember a couple of startups I've worked with. One of them, two founders were, well, one founder and one VP were longtime friends.
Yep.
Let's just say after the startup, they never spoke to each other again.
Yep. Yep.
It was a major rift, and I've seen other situations where um, uh, people are shouting at each other. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And these are friends, sometimes childhood friends. They're shouting at each other because of a breakdown in the relationship. And
Yeah. Yeah.
when two founders kind of have a split like that, it tears the company apart. You will
Yeah.
lose 90% or more of your momentum if that's not repaired.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's interesting, right? Because the for my work with, lots of executives and sort of a lot of founding teams as well, what I've realized is there's a very specific skill that most people lack, and it's called conflict management,
Mm.
right? Like you can be great friends, but when the pressure is higher than you've ever actually realized or experienced, and you kind of blame the other person for it and they blame you, like conflict management, conflict mitigation is literally taking all the EQ skills and putting it together and deploying it strategically and tactically and with wisdom. I mean, it's like it is hard to do, right? And of course, we see that in marriage, we see that in parenting, we see that in any
Right,
long-term
right.
relationship. And so most people don't have that skill, or they don't even think it's that important. They just go, well, we're really good friends and it'll survive. Well, maybe, maybe not. That's what a lot of people say when they get married, right? And so having that is really, really profound. And so you need self-awareness, you need self-management, you need empathy, and you need to know how to manage the other person's responses. It's all very, very, really important. I can see that to be true as well.
So one of the books that you had recommended to me a while back when we were talking about our marriage, my marriage with my wife Grace, was that you pointed out a book called Nonviolent Communication.
Yes.
You want to share a
Yeah,
little bit about
one of
that?
the greatest books in the world with the most horrible title ever.
Well, it sticks. I
It
mean,
does. It does. Yes, it does.
you talk a little bit about what you saw. What do you see in the book, or at least in the concepts
Yeah.
about that?
So the concept is this, right? And first of all, let me say something. Shouting at each other may or may not be acceptable. Okay. Here's why I say it. Depends on the culture,
Hmm.
right? Like in some cultures, hey, if you raise your voice like that, whoa, whoa, danger, danger, like in other cultures, is that's just kind of how they communicate. They're really loud. And so
Hmm.
it depends, right? Now, interestingly, if one person grew up in a very loud culture and the
Hmm.
other person grew up in more of a softer culture and they try to like have a communicate, you're going to have challenges. So that's
Right.
where empathy and modulation, all that comes in. But the premise of nonviolent communication is written by Marshall Rosenberg, who did conflict negotiation in the Middle East with warring nations around the world and with warring gangs in LA. Like he literally helped
Wow.
broker
Wow.
peace between some people that you thought they'll never going to get along. So how did he do it? He used this idea of nonviolent communication, which really comes down to an interesting thing, which is self-awareness of what I actually really want and value,
Hmm.
and then communicating my needs in a specific way. Right. And so too much conflict is about you did this, you did that, you suck, you made a mistake. Like it's accusatory, and that
Right.
has a
Right.
very low probability of going anywhere.
Hmm.
Instead, if you actually are willing to go, here's my values, here's what's important to me, here's what I actually really want, here's what I need, and we can communicate that in a way where the other person then has a higher probability of being able to meet that need, right? They may not. That's up to
Hmm.
them. But human nature is that we actually do want to get along. Like no one's like, I prefer to hate people. Like that's really not a preference. It's we're social beings, and so we just need a path,
Right.
right? And so really just a very basic premise of the book is that instead of going, I'll use a let's use a founder example. You didn't pull your weight and you didn't get this done on time.
Hmm.
You can say that. You go, you know what? I really need to feel like there's a sense of collaboration and joint ownership here because I'm under so much stress
Hmm.
that I can't handle this, and I can't pull, really the weight of both jobs. What I really need is I need to feel like I don't have to worry about this. And so when you make a commitment, I need you to either get it done or tell me it's not going to happen so that I can at least adjust for it versus just
Hmm.
it happen. So does that make sense? It's a very, very specific way of being able to
Right.
communicate rather than just react.
So one of the things that I've noticed from our longtime friendship is you have a wealth of knowledge. How do you compile all this information and knowledge and keep it organized and then try to apply it to your daily life?
That's a really good question. Here's what I'd say. I grew up with extremely low emotional intelligence, as I kind of alluded to earlier.
Mm, guilty.
I just didn't
Right.
understand.
Right.
And being a Chinese immigrant, I was born in Taiwan. I came to America when I was 4 years old. I had three things going against me, right? I didn't speak English. I was very hyperactive. I had ADHD, and I was incredibly socially awkward. And so I had a lot of unpleasant emotions because I basically was lonely, didn't really have friends, and didn't know how to get along with people. And so I did what a lot of kids do is I turned it all off.
Mm,
So
mm,
after getting married and then, becoming a missionary, I'm like, okay, something's got to happen here. I got to turn on something and I got to be more receptive, open-minded and open-hearted to this new set of skills. And so I'd say the main thing is number one, voracious appetite for learning.
mm.
Reading
Yes.
books is one of the most powerful things you can do.
Okay.
I love the Harry Truman quote, right? Not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers. Or not all readers are
Oh.
leaders, but all leaders are
Ah.
readers. Like you gotta
Ah.
learn, right? You gotta
Right.
consistently ingest information and be open-minded, be curious. The second thing is be willing to practice and fail a lot. I love this sort of acronym. FAIL is first attempt in learning, and it might also be SAIL. The second attempt might be tail, the third attempt. I mean, the point is you just gotta practice and learn. It's like that whole sort of deliberate practice, right? You try something that's outside your capabilities, and then you need to also have friends and mentors and people who can help you along the
Mm.
journey.
Right. Right.
Right. And one of the things I say a lot that's kind of funny is like a lot of people into self-service, like learn this on the internet, learn it by yourself. I'm like, how do you learn social skills by yourself? Like it's kind of a little problematic. And so I'm really grateful for mentors and
Right.
friends, like you,
Absolutely.
and certainly my wife, who's I call her the president of my fan club and also my greatest loving critic.
Mm.
She loves me, cares about me, but she's willing to tell me the truth and help me. And so having that, I think, is really important. That's what's helped me be able to grow in these skills. But I'd say the fundamental
Mhm.
thing is just, understanding how important it is. I'm like, you know what? This is not negotiable. I cannot continue to be a robot. I need this other thing. And I will say that the success I've had in my life, I moved to Oracle 13 years ago. I became a solutions architect. Then I was quickly promoted to manager. Then I went to AWS. Then I was quickly promoted to a global biz dev role. Then I created my own job with EQ. Like, I'm smart, smart enough. But in a sea of really, really smart people, it was these emotional social skills that differentiated me.
Yeah, I got so frustrated, especially in large corporate America. Early in my career, I was an academic, so I did well in school, but I would go into the workplace and I could see technically the right decision. Okay, there's no doubt about that, but I was so frustrated. I couldn't get people to follow.
Mm.
Okay,
Hmm.
they all went their own direction, and I was like, what gives? It's clearly the thing here. And I started having, all these conflicts in my mind. They rarely came out, although they occasionally did. They rarely came out, but I was so frustrated. I bet you probably have a lot of thoughts about the frustrated right person who gets very little done organizationally.
Yeah, yeah, I do. That describes, majority of really smart engineers in the world.
Mhm.
So the first thing is assuming you're actually right. which
Mm,
is
good
a
point.
big assumption.
Good point.
Because I mean, a lot of people are convinced they're right, and I cannot tell you if they are or not.
Yeah,
But
the average person says they are well above average in their driving
that's
skills.
right. Yes, 90% of the people are in the top 50% of drivers, and also, in mathematics and in everything else, right?
Sure,
Dunning-Kruger
sure.
effect. So, so you got that, but assuming you're right, um, one of the biggest things is the ability to influence and sell.
Right,
And this is
right.
really important for founders because, as to your point, right? A great product with an awesome business plan and $5 will get you a latte.
I'm not so sure they would do that
Yeah, yeah, maybe
nowadays.
$10. Because, I mean, if I had a nickel for every great idea out
Right,
there, like, who cares?
right.
And so that's the question, right? In everything that we do, and every person we meet with, every investor, every
Hmm.
potential customer, every, colleague you're going to need to work with, you got to imagine as you're talking, they're literally holding up a sign. One person
Right,
has a
right.
sign saying, "So what?" And the other person has a sign saying, "Who cares?" And we're
Hmm,
so
hmm.
busy talking about what we think is right that we never answer those questions.
Right, right.
And yet those are the keys to influence. And the foundational key skill for sales, for influence, for inspiration, for all of it is empathy.
Mm, mm.
It's understanding what the other person is thinking and feeling. It's understanding what their pains, challenges, hopes, and dreams are. It's understanding what motivates them. Because if you cannot align with that, you have zero possibility of influencing other people. And this is what gets a lot of people wrong, or what a lot of people get wrong, is they think if I just make the best argument,
Right, right.
if I just present the best data, if I just sound the smartest and I can overwhelm them somehow, I'll convince. And if you want to describe a lot of the problems we have in the world these days, it's because people think that actually works, and it just doesn't work,
Mm.
right? And so empathy, it's perspective seeking. And that's actually how I built this thing at Amazon. Because a lot of people ask, like, how did you get like Amazon, the super hardcore, IQ focused, hard driving, exacting company to actually care about EQ? It's because I aligned with what people actually cared about. I
Mm.
started with empathy, and I use a little bit of my sort of martial arts analogy. I've been doing Hapkido for about 25 years. And there's this idea that you do not want to oppose a force coming against you directly. Like if somebody's punching in the face, do not try to block it at 90 degrees. Like other styles may do that. But my idea in Hapkido is basically blend with the energy, align with it, and just slightly move it to one, sort of one side. Because it's only got
Right.
to miss your face by like half an inch for them to not punch you. It doesn't have to miss your face by a foot. And so it's
Hmm.
economy of motion, right? It's conservation of energy. It's alignment with the direction of the force. And that's how I got Amazon to actually believe. It was an Amazonian version of EQ that allowed people to be able to subscribe to it. So, and it worked.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat about applying some of this stuff. And I think some of the things that you just mentioned here is starting to bleed over. I want to make sure it doesn't get missed because it kind of went a little fast. You mentioned the concept about sales. And
Yep.
sales, of course, every startup needs. All right. In fact, there's a quote from the former dean of Harvard Business School that the number one regret of the HBS alumni is not investing in their sales skills. Harvard
Yeah.
has two sales courses, but they're not as popular as some of the other courses and stuff.
Yep. Right.
Um,
Yep.
so talk to me a little bit about the empathy, the sales process. How does a founder build sales skills then?
Yeah. So, there's the obvious, take a course. That will
Yeah,
definitely help. In
sure.
fact, I was just at Berkeley, our alma mater, on Tuesday night. I was teaching a sales course
Hmm.
for MBA students that was basically was being taught by a colleague of mine from Amazon, and then I came in and talked about the EQ part. So, first of all, I recommend a great book. It's called "To Sell Is Human,"
Hmm.
and it's by Dan Pink. And the whole point is everyone's in sales, right?
Yeah.
I mean, every situation you're in where you're trying to basically get somebody to kind of do something with you or a little differently, you're selling. Really, really great book. The second thing is a lot of people, what people get wrong about sales is they're trying to pitch. That's the
Hmm.
fundamental error in sales. Because what you pitch and what you believe is important and what you think is actually really vital may not be at all what the other person cares about.
Yes, yes.
So the first key to sales is understanding. It's empathy, it's listening. And there's a really powerful skill called perspective seeking. Now, notice it's different from perspective taking. Perspective taking means I'm trying to imagine what it's like in their situation. You may or may not be correct. You may be completely wrong. Perspective seeking means asking good questions to understand what are their pains, their challenges, their hopes, their dreams, and their values. If you can actually understand that and you can then map your solution to that, then you have a higher probability of making a sale,
Exactly.
right? And so the analogy I use is kind of like, okay, the plumbing in my kitchen literally just burst and there's water all over the floor, and you show up and go, hey, I'm selling electrician services. I'm the best electrician in the Bay Area. Like, I don't give a crap. I need a plumber,
Right,
right?
right.
And so, that's the issue there. And we're like trying to sell our electrical services when people need plumbing. Now, if we can make a connection and go, well, the reason the plumbing actually fails is because there's a fundamental electricity problem over here we can long-term solve, then you've got maybe some conversation.
Yeah, that brings up a little bit of some difficult memories because one of the startups I was at, the founders, I was not a founder of this particular startup, and the founders did all the sales, but they weren't very good at it.
Yep.
Okay. And it was very, very tough because the sales were nowhere near where it should have been. And that was tough for me because I tied my equity compensation to top line company sales.
Yep.
But I could see the same types of mistakes over and over again. And I'm going to put into the chat window another book, actually. It's the book that I've used to learn how to sell. Somewhat similar to you, I grew up socially awkward, very nerdy, kind of very unsocial, not antisocial. That's different. I wanted to be social, but I didn't know how. Okay, so I was unsocial. And one of the guys before I got married, one of my roommates was a salesperson, and he was actually really good at it. And he pointed me to a book called Conceptual Selling
Hmm.
by Robert Miller and Stephen Hyman. Miller and Hyman have a course. You could sign up for it if you wanted to. It takes several months to be able to go through the entire thing and stuff. They have a course that talks about the conceptual sales. They have a course called Strategic Selling. Conceptual selling is more about the sales meeting. Strategic selling is more about the sales process.
Yep.
Okay. So I went through the conceptual selling book and I was amazed. It was all about connecting and understanding what the customer really needed. That I thought I could never be a salesperson because I don't feel confident in being a talker. Okay, I've had to learn to talk over, the years, but I still am not confident about that. But what I learned from the book Conceptual Selling, a lot of sales is more about listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's interesting, right? It's Bob Berg, right? A famous quote, like all things being equal, people will buy from those they know,
Hmm.
like, and trust.
Hmm.
And guess what? People like people who listen. People trust people who listen. People get to know people better who listen and ask follow-up questions, right? Tell me more. Wow, that's really interesting. I'd love to understand that better. How is that impacting you?
Hmm.
What challenges are you facing that is really important? What are your goals and dreams, both professionally and personally? These are things that really make a difference. Right? And I will say this, like one of the secrets to my success and what I've been able to do is relationships. I love this quote by Simon Sinek, right? It goes, 100% of investors are people, 100% of customers are people, 100% of employees are people. If you don't understand people, you don't understand business.
Hmm.
And what founders don't realize sometimes is that they're running a business. They're not just trying to get a product out to the world, right?
Right.
It's the business part, but relationships.
Right.
And I have a framework that I use that I have found to be really powerful. I'm going to quote a lot of books because I'm a avid reader.
Okay.
It's from Adam Grant, and it's called Give and Take. And the concept, and Adam Grant, really, really well-known Wharton professor and well-known author, and his whole point is that you can either be a giver, which means you give more than you take. You can be a taker, which means you take more than you give, or you can be a matcher, which means you generally do quid pro quo. And a lot of people think, let's match. You do for me, I do for you, and all that. But the most successful people in the world are givers. They give more than they take.
Hmm.
They're trying to help other people, and they demonstrate that first, and that earns trust. Now, the caveat is the least successful people are also givers.
Hmm.
And the difference is that when you give without taking care of yourself, then you basically just burn out and you don't succeed. But when you strategically and thoughtfully
Got
and
it.
intentionally give because you generally just want to help other people be successful, those are going to be the most successful business people. And so, I've been running a business inside Amazon that I created is my own startup, called the Epic Leadership Program.
Mhm.
And, it was wildly successful because of all these relationships I built because I was generally trying to be a strategic giver because that earned trust, that earned like. And
Mhm.
if we do that, it can make a huge difference.
Fascinating. We've hung around a long time. You've never shared that one with me. I wrote that one down. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I
Oh,
only give that to paying customers, but yeah, so okay, okay. Sounds good.
it's a good
Not
thing
that
I
you're
don't have
paying me,
to.
but you know.
I'm glad that because over the years, if you actually invoiced me all these times, I'd probably be bankrupt.
Yeah, and I'd be retired, but oh well, what can we say? What can we do? What can we do about that? Yeah.
All right. So, one thing you mentioned that I wanted to circle back on was the concept of conflict.
Yeah.
Um, that's a tough one. I grew up in a household with a lot of conflict, so I hated it. And you pointed me to a TED Talk. Claire Canfield, was that the
Yeah, that's
person?
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beauty of conflict. The
Yeah.
beauty of
Talk to me
conflict.
about the beauty of conflict, and
Yeah.
especially since we've been talking about founder cohesivity and stuff, how can a founder apply or take advantage of conflict? Maybe not
Yeah.
try to create it, but how can they take
Yeah.
advantage of conflict?
So here's the thing, right? Conflict is a fundamental characteristic of any relationship that
Hmm.
is quality and meaningful.
Yes.
It is impossible to be able to have two people who are not complete clones of each other actually get along all the time, right? And you probably don't want to co-found a company with clones of you because then there's no benefit to that,
Hmm.
right? You're looking for diversity of thought, you're looking for, different perspectives, you're looking for challenge. And so believing that conflict is actually a positive part of a relationship, I think is first the mindset shift. And then going, you know what? How do we actually manage this well? So it takes self-awareness. Hey, like when we have a conflict, I'm feeling whatever, fill in the blank. I'm feeling, anxious. I'm feeling disrespected. I'm feeling afraid, or I'm feeling excited, whatever it may be. And then being able to manage yourself so that you can be calm and approach it in sort of a clear manner. I
Hmm.
will tell you one of the most powerful things that can help, super simple, is if you kind of find yourself elevated and angry, just count to 10 and take a couple of deep breaths.
It's hard for me to get past three.
Yeah, yeah, but that's the thing, right? Because here's the neuroscience behind it. When your sort of amygdala hijacks you, like the sort of big emotions and you feel a threat, it takes about 6 seconds for the amygdala to kind of die down a little bit and your prefrontal cortex to come back online, so the rational part is a little more
Mm.
strong. So literally 6 seconds later, you will be a different version of yourself. And a lot of people say something in 3 seconds, and it's like not the ideal version of what they want to
Yeah.
say. So that's a super simple tactic. Um,
Okay.
but then the other thing is replace anger with curiosity. Instead of like visceral response, go, let me really try to be curious. Okay, let me understand more about that. Tell me more. What is driving that sort of position?
Hmm.
Or like intentionally do that, and that actually really does help. And then the other thing that's also just a really powerful technique is finding common ground first. Because what a lot of mistakes people make is they go, okay, where do we disagree, and just kind of go at it instead of going, okay, I know that we're both after the best solution for the customer here. We're definitely aligned on wanting to solve this problem.
Hmm.
Okay, now that being said, we have very different perspectives, so now we can talk. But at least we've sort of set a baseline of commonality before we actually jump into the conflict part, which, there's always commonality because you're in the same company for a reason,
Right.
right? And so there's another really great book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, right? He was the lead hostage negotiator for the FBI for many years, and he actually uses these very techniques that I just shared about. Really, real powerful. So he would actually go in and try to get hostages out of the hostage taker situations. And do you know what this is kind of a fun thing for the audience. I'd love to actually do a little poll. What do you think the success rate for hostage negotiators is? Put in the chat. I'd
Oh,
love to see. What do you think is success rate? Like what percentage do they actually get the hostages out alive? Okay, go ahead and pop in the chat. And while you kind of put that in there, there's he basically kind of puts all this into a conflict sort of negotiation type of situation. And these are the things he did. Okay, so I see everything from a high of about 99. Wow, that's great faith in hostage negotiators rather. And then there's like a low of 7. Okay, we anchored high a little bit because the first person put 90, so that's psychological. The first person's number tends to anchor the responses after that, which is interesting because you see it here. The answer is actually 95.
wow.
Uh, and that's because they're trained in conflict negotiation, and
Hmm.
most hostage takers do not want those hostages, right? They really want something else. Their goal was not, I want a bunch of people that I'm holding up with like firearms. They're like, I want to get out of here. I want justice. I want some. So
Right,
it's
right.
finding that path. And with founders, guess what? Most founders actually would prefer to continue to work together and have this work out. So if you can
Right.
find the path, then, if you have the skill, it'll definitely be positive.
That's awesome. I never thought about the hostage taker mindset. Like, I don't know this person. This person, is annoying or whatever. Why do I want to have this person next to me?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'm putting it into the chat here. Chris Voss
Okay.
wrote "Never split the difference,"
Got it.
and
Got it.
and he calls it that because you never have that option in hostage negotiation.
Hmm.
You're not like, you know what, you got 4 hostages. Why don't you just keep 2? I'll take 2. We'll call it a day. You, you need to get them all out. That's the only win, right? So
Got it. So we've been going back and forth for a while here, and I've really enjoyed it. I want to continue, but I want to give the audience an opportunity to ask their questions as well. I've opened up it so that people can unmute themselves, and maybe I can start with this and invite. Looks like Lawrence had asked a question about. Well, Lawrence, if you can unmute yourself, if you're still here, please feel free to ask your question live.
Sweet. Yeah, thank you. So I'm just gonna reread the question. I appreciate the presentation, and the dialogue. So the question is, have you considered cultural competency in your process along with emotional intelligence? If you have or haven't, do you think there's any overlap? And if so, what does that overlap look like?
yeah, the answer is a resounding yes. And that's because emotionally intelligent behavior looks different in different cultures. What might be really emotional intelligent at one, you can look like a complete idiot in another. And so that cultural concept is actually really important, the sort of cultural intelligence. And so emotional intelligence actually comes down to 4 basic sort of domains. It's self-management, self-awareness, empathy or social awareness, and then relationship management. So it's those 4. How it's deployed will vary based on situation, condition, culture, who the audience is, the context, a lot of other things. It's simply the intelligent use of emotions. All right, so I'll give you an example. I used one a little earlier. Different cultures have different conflict styles, right? And that's been well studied. Some are kind of more reserved and indirect, like Japan. Others
Hmm.
are more sort of, loud and direct, like Israel. And so if you have a Japanese person over here and an Israeli over here trying to negotiate something, it's going to be a little weird unless they both understand, how to modulate things in a way that's going to be productive. And so And again, it doesn't have to be international. It could be literally on your own team. Maybe you came from a very vocal, speak
Right,
up, say
right.
what you think, sort of in your face, background, and somebody else came from a much more reserved background. How are you going to actually interact? That takes self-awareness, it takes empathy, and it takes your ability to modulate the way you behave and communicate in order to be able to have a, positive outcome. Sam is laughing here, I guess.
This is very embarrassing to say. My wife is very much comfortable. She grew up in a very chaotic environment. I grew up in a very, very structured environment. You're gonna laugh at this. When I was evaluating whether or not to marry my wife, I actually built a spreadsheet.
Yep. Well, and these days you could feed that into, AI and have
There
it
you
give you,
go.
spit out some, life advice. No, please don't do that. Okay, that was a joke. Please do not do that.
Oh my
But
goodness.
spreadsheet's cool. I made a pro and con list. I did something where it was very thoughtful and methodical. Well, thankfully, she did not make that list, and so I duped her into marrying me.
Yes.
And we've been together for 35 years, so thank goodness.
Understood. So, there's another question in the chat. Wes asks, how do you tactfully ask an investor during a pitch what they want?
Okay. You know, again, it depends on the situation, right? Like I think developing a set of questions that you're comfortable with
Hmm.
and that are genuinely curious, I think actually would make a difference. Like for me, I would go to C-level executives and leaders and go, what business problems are you facing that could be solved with greater connection and understanding? I really want to know. Like it's tactfully a lot of times is not the phrasing, it's the authenticity behind it. Like if you actually genuinely want to know, what else is there? Right? You may want to just practice it so you're not nervous in saying it, but it's like, hey, what are the business challenges you're facing? What are the goals that you have? Where would you like what would you like to see as success in 3 years? How do you measure that? Right? What's keeping you up at night? I mean, there's so many sort of questions, but whatever's comfortable for you. But I will say the attitude behind it is genuinely wanting to understand what are their pains, challenges, hopes, dreams, and values. Okay, that is a fundamental of any relationship of note or of quality, right? Now, if it's a transactional relationship, by the way, if I just want to buy something on Amazon, I don't really want to talk to somebody. I just want the best
Right,
deal. Like that's just
right.
transactional. But if you're going to actually have some kind of meaningful, longer term relationship, understanding those things is going to be really key. So I'd say the tact is actually a little more about you being comfortable with the question that's as authentic to you and that you have practiced it enough so that you're not nervous and you can, say it in a clear way.
Hmm. Yeah. I do think that in the startup space, there's so much advice about startup fundraising that I think you can learn a fraction, some of what you need to do, what you need to pay attention to in a startup pitch to an investor.
Yeah.
Um, I
Now,
do believe that it is important from a cultural perspective. When I talk about building partnerships, one of the aspects that I talk about is culture. And what that means in a partnership relationship is have you walked a mile in their shoes? Okay.
yeah.
So, as an example, if you're an auto mechanic and you fix cars all the day, all the time, you're gonna have an extra sensitivity towards, how easy your car is to repair. Okay, when you buy your
Yeah.
car. All
Yeah.
right. So understanding the pains that investors go through is going to, if you start with that, I think it helps sharpen some of your focus in the actual investor conversation. And one of the things that you've talked about is really asking about what the investor goes through. Of course, definitely you should ask about what is their investment philosophy, what is their profile of companies to invest. And I haven't seen very many founders do this. I'd be very curious to see how well it works. I'll probably start trying to do it a little bit more. Maybe ask what were some of the characteristics of some of your most successful investments, and what were some of the characteristics of your biggest flops?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that goes to Paul Graham's, what we look for in founders article, right? Like he
Hmm.
said, these are the kinds of founders that we are looking for at Y Combinator.
Hmm.
And if you don't have them, then they're the ones that they're not looking for. So he actually said it like everyone's got this criteria in their mind,
Right.
right? And I would say there's a really powerful concept that has made me, I think, a lot more successful than average, and that is humanizing every person I meet.
Ah.
And I think one of the challenges people have when they're nervous, when they're stressed out, is they become a role or position. You're an investor. You are my boss. You are a CEO. You're relegated to some, sort of cognitive role, persona, rather than you are a human being who
Mhm.
has pains, challenges, hopes, and dreams. And one of the things that actually helps me be less nervous and more confident and more empathetic when I meet with all types, because I met like the C-level executives of the world's largest and most successful companies. I mean, I'm not going to drop names here because that's, but like these are intimidating people who are like in charge of
Right,
like
right.
hundreds of billions of
I've
dollars
totally
of
felt that.
stuff, right?
Yeah, I remember
So,
feeling that way when I sat with the heads of certain funds who,
yeah, exactly,
VC
right?
funds, they manage $1 billion. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, so when I go meet them, I go, you know what? They are that, but they're
Right.
much more than that. They're a human being. And you know what I found? Every human being's got problems, man. And a lot of times the more sort of notable you are as a leader, the more problems you got. Like there is a
Mm.
lot of stress that they're dealing with. And so if I can actually help them, again, it's that giver mentality. If I can be a giver and somehow solve their problems, if this can be a win-win, then hey, fantastic, right? That's really what we're looking for. So that definitely gives me confidence. It puts me in the right mindset. And it also, establishes a rapport more quickly and allows us to have a better conversation.
Got it. Got it. So Steve Waddell asked a question that I think is somewhat nuanced. So Steve, if you're still here and you can unmute yourself, I would invite you to ask your question live.
Hey Sam, how's it going?
Great, man. It's good to hear your voice
Good,
again.
good to see you. Yeah, Rich, when you have a board that's kind of acting irrationally and attempting to assert control in a way that threatens the company. I mean, we're working grants with the NIH. We started out as a hardware company, and because of COVID, we've become a health tech company, and they don't understand clinical trial
Mm.
timelines, and it's a whole different process. They think we can go to market faster, and we can't. They want to do things like TQM in the middle of clinical trials. I'm like, we're developing a product
Oh.
and we're not designing for manufacture yet. There's a place for that. It's just not yet. We need to get through trials. And they don't understand that.
Mm,
And it's become very adversarial to the point of both sides have attorneys now. They're trying to do things
Mm.
that are bad. I don't want to get into that in this room right now, but it's a tough situation because
mm.
I have to look out what's right for the grants.
Yeah,
I'm the principal investigator. And my job is to make sure we do things in accordance with 45 CFR and all the rules and regulations surrounding the grants, which they don't understand because they've never lived in that world.
sure. Yeah. So what question do you have about that I could possibly address?
Well, when you're dealing with this whole, it's hard to, it's become emotional on their side.
Yeah,
Mm.
right.
And I guess that's where this comes in, right? And I understand, you try to see things from their perspective and so on. I've tried that. It just isn't going anywhere. Um,
Sure.
and so it's a struggle. I've offered a buyout,
Yeah.
and in fact, one of the founders is in at 250K. I've offered him the book value of 231
Yeah.
and hadn't
So
been accepted.
So,
so
well,
so
Rich, why don't you
probably,
go ahead and ask?
huh?
Rich, go ahead. I was going to
Yeah,
interrupt, but
so
go ahead.
so this is a very sort of specific situation, and we probably would really need to talk much more deeply for me to give you, I would say, probably premium advice. What I would say is this is that you are in obviously a negotiation situation. Now, unfortunately, it's contentious. For whatever reason, there's misalignment, trust has been broken, there's different motives and all that. At the end of the day, emotional intelligence is essentially knowing how to have emotions work for you rather than against you. And you cannot control the emotional state of other people. You can try to influence it, but that's only probabilistic, right? You may or may not be able to do it, but you can manage your own. So what I would say is in this situation, probably the simplest but hopefully helpful is you want to be clear thinking. You want to be both tactical and strategic and be as clear thinking as possible. So managing your own emotional state will give you a higher probability of making a good decision. right? Because you don't want to be like flustered, angry,
Mhm.
resentful, peeved, like that's not necessarily going to help you unless you can channel it into, okay, I need to basically, what is my goal, what I'm trying to accomplish, and how can I tactically and strategically, have the highest probability of getting that done. I think that's probably the most fundamental thing, hopefully, that I can share. And over
Thank
to
you.
Sam, I
Thank you.
think, get a thought too.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking this, Steve, but one of the things, given what you've described, and I don't know all the nuances, but I see a little bit of risk if you're the only person working on this problem. Okay. And one of the things I found is that when I get in a conflict with my wife, and sometimes I've had to sit with Rich and his wife to talk through it, is having both parties trying to work the solution helps, especially with a mediator. Okay.
Mm.
Sometimes my
Mhm.
emotions just get the best of me, and my wife is telling me something, and I just can't hear her because I don't, whatever, I'm triggered, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when I sit down with another couple who knows our situation and they listen, and then the other couple says the exact same thing that my wife says, okay, like, oh, maybe I should listen here because there's less emotional baggage. So I would encourage you to, if the other party is open to it, um, sit down and find somebody who can help you mediate, negotiate. Maybe you and Rich can connect afterwards, okay? And you guys can do some type of sidebar, follow up, okay?
Thank you. Thank you. You guys doing a great job. I appreciate it.
You bet. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. All right, I think we're near the end of our time. Sam, should we wrap it up?
Yeah, I did want to maybe wrap it up with one question.
Sure.
You
Yep.
mentioned one thing about learning, and a lot of what I do is about teaching because I've been through so much pain as a startup founder. I've really emphasized, trying to get founders well equipped with what they know. Can you comment a bit about learning is in life as a leader, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. So the the most important thing to do today is not to learn or to think.
Mm,
It is to unlearn and rethink.
mm,
The world has changed so much and is changing so rapidly that to just continuously add to the pile of what you think you know is suboptimal. What we need to do is we need to have intellectual humility. We need to have adaptability and
got it.
flexibility and say, what
That's awesome.
beliefs do I need to discard? What parts of my identity am I too closely sort of aligned with? What things do I need to get rid of to make room for the things that actually really do matter? And so Adam Grant says we need a new definition of intelligence. It's not just the ability to think and learn, but the ability to rethink and unlearn. And so the bottom line is this, as a leader, as a founder, as a professional, as really anybody, what got you here won't get you there,
Got it. Yeah.
right? And so, and that's both cognitive and social emotional, right? Like, why do people resist change? Why do people hold on to beliefs? Why do people, assume they're right? I mean, it's not that they're literally the smartest person there. Like, it's the social emotional part that is kind of we got to deal with as part of the whole process.
Wow. Lots of great nuggets here. I've been trying to take some notes on the side as we've been talking. Rich, you pointed out in the chat window how people can follow up with you. For those who may not have access to the chat, can you verbally just summarize how can people stay in touch with you? Or
Yeah, so there's a few things. You can follow me on LinkedIn, Richard Hua. Happy to have you follow. I post something every day. I do have a newsletter that welcome you to join. It's on Substack. You can find me as well. It's the EQ and Success newsletter. And then my website. It's simply my name.co, richardhua.co. And if you go to one place, that's the place you'll kind of find all the resources and all that. But yeah, would love to help you continue along your EQ journey. And if there's a deeper conversation that you think might be worth it, then happy to chat because my goal really is to bring EQ to 1 billion people in the world. And I have a whole strategy to make that happen. So I'd love to help people develop this vital and mission critical skill set.
wow, this has been awesome. I've learned a lot already, and I'm very thankful. Rich, thank you very much for the time. I think everybody appreciates it. Do follow up with Rich, take advantage of it. This has been a great opportunity here. Thank you.
Take care. Thanks, Sam. Bye-bye.
If this was helpful, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. You can also check out our other videos for more startup content.